Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we review the Warhammer 40k novel Deathworlder by author Victoria Hayward. As usual with reviews, I won't be diving into major specific story spoilers, but I will be discussing themes and narratives of the story. And as always, let's begin by checking out the synopsis off the back of the book. Lazuli is a world beyond the brink. Its battle against the Tyranids all but lost. Once magnificent cities lie in ruin. The seas boil. The skies crack. Horrific alien bioforms devour. In mere days the planet will be consumed. The 903rd Catachan Night Shrikes defend one of the last fortresses still standing. Led by Major Wolf Khan, to die fighting is all that is expected of them. Until she is given one last mission, to lead a squad through the apocalypse and recover a piece of archaeotech that may doom or deliver the entire Lazuli system. Facing insurmountable odds and zero hope for aid, the Major must hold her squad together as they pick their way through an endless Xeno jungle. The enemy is merciless, relentless, endlessly adaptable, and formidably resourceful. But so too is Khan. Okay, so Deathworlder. If you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you may have heard me say previously over the years that I never really used to love Astra Militarum stories that much. That the grand scale tank battles aren't particularly my cup of tea. That I prefer more story-driven narratives. However, over recent years we've really received different kinds of Militarum stories. Ones focused much more on single squads and missions against the odds. Very much the kind of story-driven narratives that I love. And Deathworlder is definitely another one of those. Its premise feels very similar and reminiscent to two other fairly recent Militarum novels that I've read. One being Catachan Devil, where a Catachan squad is tasked with a covert mission to a fallen outpost behind enemy lines, and two Creed Ashes of Cadia, where Ursula Creed must return to the ruins of Cadia to find a rumoured top-secret weapon that could turn the tide of the war. And here in Deathworlder, we have a squad of Catachans tasked with finding a top-secret artifact of the Mechanicum that could be used against the Tyranids in the wider war, amid a world falling to a hive fleet. So it feels quite a similar story type. Kind of a combination of Catachan Devil and the Ashes of Cadia. Now, this story has a small cast of characters that it focuses on, primarily the squad tasked with the mission, which is absolutely fantastic. There's not a lot of jumping around from one theatre to another here, a mandatory villain story point to see. Instead here, it stays locked on the people that matter. The squad that you're following. And that is really a big benefit in this kind of a story. And you won't be surprised to hear me say that I'm really glad the author took this route. There's two main character points of view. One arguably the main character, the said Major Wolf Khan, your prototypical grizzled veteran commander, and a Cadian Lieutenant Anditz, a survivor of another regiment who has knowledge of the region that the mission needs to go to, and thus he becomes attached to the mission. Wolf's squad is made up of supporting characters, a calculating Sergeant Haruto, a muscle-bound heavy flamer-wielding trooper Adair, a sniper called Ghost, and a tech adept from the Mechanicum named Wraith. Now, I read the paperback edition of this story, so if you listen to the audiobook version, I may be pronouncing some names differently. But anyway, you get your motley band of different characters to follow along, and maybe thanks to the story remaining focused on them, giving us time to see them, get to know them, and bond with them, I actually found myself enjoying these characters the more the story went along. For example, Trooper Adair at the beginning felt very much your stereotypical Catachan idea to me. Big, strong, muscly, wielding a heavy weapon, probably going to yell a Predator-esque "I ain't got time to bleed" at some point in the story. However, as the story unravelled, you get to see past that first image and outside layer of her. You get to see the person behind and within, how much more than that first impression she is. And by the end of the story, I genuinely liked and cared about her, wanted her to survive. And that goes for most of the characters here. There's a natural unravelling and revelation of their personalities that just unknowingly endears you to them throughout the journey, legitimately taking me from a point of, okay, we have the classic roles here, a heavy weaponer, a sniper, the thinker, etc., to actually being invested in them. With Lieutenant Andit, the Cadian, yeah, we get the expected conversations of banter of differences between Cadia and Catachan, but we also get to see a much more profound story he's experiencing. The mental scars of his battles that he's been through, the toll of surviving where others haven't, how that can affect the decisions you make and the outlook that you have. And I particularly enjoyed Sergeant Haruto and Tech Adept Rafe's intertwined story too. How a focus on the mission or survival for an outlook can make a big difference in such a situation. You get vibes of Haruto coming to genuinely care about her, despite her being from the Mechanicum. And again, I just found myself really enjoying their pairing. The Tech Adept reminding me of Tali from Mass Effect for some reason. So the development of these characters was a real strength. And I'll also say the premise of it all is a great one. Heading behind enemy lines as a world is literally being devoured by a hive fleet. I mean, I think everyone would agree that that is an awesome idea for a story. And you really feel that early on, as the tides of the Tyranid advance feels inevitable. That this world is surely doomed. How this mission becomes the new priority. No longer victory. It adds a nice backdrop of gravitas to it. That people are sacrificing themselves for this mission. This ideal. It adds that element of all or nothing. And I'd definitely say the early portion helps to build that feeling up well. There's also a really intriguing element of the Genestealer cult's actions thrown off due to the loss of its leadership. So you get a great added element of the cult, but never quite as you've seen them before. I'm not sure it developed quite as I hoped it would, but the idea and take on it is fantastic. Now, you may notice that as I spoke of the character's development that I loved, that I didn't mention the main one, Major Khan. And unfortunately, I'd say that's because she was the only character I didn't really grow to like or care about. Again, she feels very much the expected grizzled commander, scarred, gruff attitude, likes a smoke. However, she never really felt more than that to me. We're told how great and respected a hero she is by her squad, but I just never quite felt it. And I think maybe that's because this feels more like an adventure story than maybe the hard-hitting, desperate struggle against the odds I was expecting. The Catachans are the elite of the elite, chosen for the mission specifically because they're the only ones who could do it. But I just didn't feel that when they were on the way. They really could have been any squad of Militarum troopers for me. Just small things, such as deciding to take a prisoner along rather than executing them or leaving them, on a vital time-pressured mission behind enemy lines. Or when getting to the jungle and you think, this is it, now we'll see. But they just kind of walk through talking, even shouting at times, setting up camp in a clearing with a campfire, cutting open a plant that ends up burning them. Again, just little things, but it really reduced any element of threat or danger from building. That sense that Khan and her squad are as elite as they are said to be. And I think maybe I felt that way more, because as I've said earlier, I've read Catachan Devil, which really did that element well. Had you feeling and seeing why the Catachans are the best of the best for those kind of behind enemy lines objectives. Here, it didn't really quite capture that. It felt a little bit more like the journey of the Fellowship in Lord of the Rings, for example. Sure, the squad encounters big threats and Tyranids along the way, overcoming big obstacles, but for me, it just felt more like an adventure. It didn't quite capture the element of elite, covert, pressure, time-driven mission behind enemy lines. It's not a bad thing, it's just not quite what I was expecting. I'll tell you what it kind of reminded me of. A more old-school story such as, say, Nightbringer from the Uriel Ventris series. It's got all the grim dark elements that you love, but just somehow feels a bit lighter. Overall score-wise, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It's a good, solid, enjoyable read. A nice standalone adventure. The idea of a mission behind Tyranid lines in a race against time as the planet's being devoured is fantastic. And being able to see what goes on behind those lines is really interesting. And there's a great cast of characters for the most part that you get to follow along from beginning to end, allowing you to bond with and feel attached to by the end of it. But I'd say it just misses a bit on a real sense of danger, feeling that pressure of a true elite covert mission. But for a standalone adventure story, it is absolutely perfectly enjoyable, and one I definitely think you will enjoy. But as always everyone, that's it for today. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.